Thank you, Jen. So we'll record the session, as we just said, for those that are coming in later or leaving earlier, or we really do appreciate that this is for many people, not for all, not for our Perth colleagues, but it is that lunchtime session. So just as you're coming on in, hello and welcome to you firstly. I hope you all had a lovely weekend. And if you wouldn't mind just popping into the chat and letting people know where you're from and what brings you here to the session today on unlocking the power of self-awareness. Give people another minute or so, I think. Just as you're pondering what brings you here, and let people know where you're from too. I think that's always it's always interesting just to know where we've got guests and presents from. While we're waiting, I just wanted to at least commence formally by acknowledging the lands of the Wurundjeri people, which is where I am located today. And I pay my respects to Aboriginal elders past, present, and emerging. And I extend those respects to anyone who may be joining us that's from Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. Welcome to you all. It's a pleasure to always start a Monday with you all. I love the Monday masterclasses. Number one, I love preparing the topics, and often they're things that we're covering in programs like the Deliberate Leader. But through different conversations, different work that we do with clients, different coaching conversations, we get to pick up a little bit more on what's happening and kind of what's current for leaders. And this topic of self-awareness is one that comes through a lot because it's a bit like empathy, right? We all know we need it, but how do we kind of become more self-aware? And it's really, really hard. Do you think it's hard? Mel, you're nodding. Tell me why you're nodding if you don't mind coming off mute.
Sorry, I had to try find where the mute button was.
No.
Um, I think personally for me is just belief in yourself, about that you've got the abilities to be a leader of some sort and that you've got the knowledge for it. So I find, I suppose, that hard to sometimes believe in myself. So yeah, and that I've got the skills to be able to lead others. So
Yeah. And that's good. And Mel, I like that example you've given is one that we it's a different side of self-awareness, and that is that awareness, that confidence and belief that we can do things. Even when we think we can't, or even when we haven't faced that challenge before. I was having a conversation with someone this morning that is playing with some ideas on what to do next. And they said, I kind of have an inkling of what I want to do, but I'm scared. They said fear is the thing that's stopping me. And so once they are aware of it, they already were aware of it before the conversation. But I think sometimes confronting it, naming it, and going, okay, that's the thing that's actually blocking me. It brings it into our vision. So it's not sitting kind of here at periphery. It's bringing it at the fore, and then we can deal with it in a different way. The other thing that we often think about with self-awareness is the things that other people can see and what we can't see. And that's what we call blind spots, which we're going to be going into a little bit more today. So, but thanks for kicking us off, Mel. For those of you that have just joined again, welcome. We are recording the session, so we're going to add it into our community forum, which means you could go back to it, and colleagues that can't join today can also go back to it. But I really thank you for spending your lunch hour with us and with me. I'm going to flick over to presentation mode because I do have some slides that I wanted to share with you today. And the slides also will be available in our community page. All right. I think I've all got you there, which is still good. So unlocking the power of self-awareness and tuning into blind spots. That's what our main topic is today. I did want to cover a few other little bits and pieces that kind of sit to the side and below and diagonally and all around with self-awareness. So we're going to go into, why is it important? And Mel's already kicked us off beautifully. We're going to do a little bit more of that in a moment. I'm going to ask you a reflective question just to get you kind of in the zone. We're going to be looking at blind spots in a particular model that help us to uncover blind spots. And if anyone's been teaching teenagers to drive recently, you'll know the joys of teaching teenagers about blind spots so they can drive safely on the road. So more about that in a moment. The importance of the pause. And I think for leaders, whether you've got big teams, small teams, irrespective of what level of leadership you may be at right now, one thing I think we either forget, certainly nobody told me this, it was a lesson learnt, one of those that I wish I'd learnt a little sooner, and that is the power of the pause. And that is just slowing down, because that obviously really helps us to become more self-aware. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we do that. And then we can't really do a session on self-awareness without considering feedback. And that is, when we are giving feedback, but also when we are receiving feedback, because that is one of the key ingredients for self-awareness, probably the most important. And I've just given you a massive clue, so hold on to that when we get into the blind spot session. Does that sound like what you signed up for today? Brilliant. Let's dive on in. Plenty of time for Q&As too. So feel free, if you're not so familiar with Zoom, there's a little reaction button downstairs. James is already excellent. James couldn't have asked for that little segue or prompt better. James is already showing us a little reaction there. Pop your hand up. Feel free to unmute, come into the conversation. For those of you that have got cameras off, fully respect if you need to, but otherwise switch them on if you can. And that way we're looking at our colleagues and I can see your faces, which makes it a lot easier for me too. All right, let's jump on in. Okay, so again, utilizing the chat function if you haven't already today, what does self-awareness mean to you, particularly as a leader? Mel's already kicked us off beautifully, but I'd like to hear from the rest of you. What does self-awareness mean to you? And also, how are you practicing self-awareness at the moment? Are you doing anything in particular that you would categorize as, yeah, I'm doing that, and that's me practicing self-awareness? I'm going to open up my little chat here so I can see. Good to see you all. Lots of lovely familiar faces, and welcome to the new faces too. We don't need a theoretical or a academic definition of self-awareness. I'm just interested in what it means for you. Thank you. Nice, James. Well, now you've just made us all hungry, but thank you. That's good. I'm glad that you are eating. It is the lunch hour, so fully appreciate that. No worries at all. Yeah, Mandy's got two sides of the coin there. Mandy, that is a beautiful, colourful background that you've got there. Love it. Is that your actual office, or that's not a filter, is it?
No, I'm sitting in a little booth at WeWork.
Ah, that's cool, because usually those booths are grey and pretty uninspiring. So that's lovely.
Yeah, it's pretty uninspiring other than a colourful.
Well, we can see. We're
Yeah,
appreciating
nice.
throws of colour. All right. Thank you, Barb. Yep. Knowing so we've got again that two sides, which I think is really important. Yeah. All feedback, Barb. Is it that you love receiving all feedback? Yep, Barb's saying yes.
Yeah, we try to tell everybody that feedback is a gift. So our Vice Chancellor is really heavy on that. And so we really do have to think about receiving feedback, particularly when it's constructive, and how we respond to receiving it in order to keep welcoming it.
Yeah, good. Excellent. That reminds me of a mindset, right? Around feedback. And even when it's not going to be good. Once upon a time I ran these workshops called Difficult Conversations. And I thought this is a silly title, because we just drum into ourselves, it's going to be difficult conversations, it's going to be really hard. Oh, challenging conversations, all those kinds of things. And I think it's a mindset too. I mean, not to say that some of those conversations are not without their challenges, because we may need to deliver a message that we perceive to be difficult, but it doesn't help us when I kind of call it that. Yeah, nice one too, Samantha. Understanding myself and how my words and actions impact others. Yeah. There's definitely this two-way theme that I'm seeing from the answers that are coming through. If those of you that are still pondering, please feel free to continue to add to the chat. So we're answering those two questions that are on the screen. And we've really got a lovely theme there around it's two-way. and how we're practicing self-awareness, gaining that feedback, asking for feedback. But being really, in that first initial image that I had for you, it's being able to look in the mirror, and this person looks like they're pretty pleased, right? There's a cheeky kind of little pose that's going on there. We can sometimes look in the mirror and maybe miss things that other people are seeing, or see things that other people are not seeing. So it is very much this two-way reflection that we need. Yeah, Mike's saying understanding that internal state. Yeah. Tell us, Mike, would you mind coming off mute and just telling us a little bit more about that? Mike, I think we've got Mike off mute. Mike, when you can jump in, that's okay if you can't. But I think it is, this internal state is, sometimes when we want to dip into reflection and really thinking, yeah, no problems. When we're thinking about how we're turning up for others, the impact of our behavior on others, it is very much understanding internal state. Because if we are not prepared to really tune in and understand that internal state, it kind of creates a barrier for us to really be able to understand what's our impact of behavior on others. It brings about more empathy and compassion. So we do have that, that sense of, how am I turning up for others? Even the impact of my mood, whether I've had enough sleep, like all those things that, might impact behavior. How is that impacting others? How is it impacting their experience of us, particularly when we are the leader? All right. I wanted to give you a little bit of a definition of self-awareness. And I'm not sure if you've come across any of Tara Urich's work. Tara is arguably the leading authority on self-awareness globally. So she's one of the most watched TED talkers. So I would jump on after this masterclass, obviously, but when you've got a moment, jump on, search her up, and you can see the fabulous work that she's done. She's an amazing author and speaker. And this is what she says. She says it's the ability to see ourselves clearly, to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. I think she sums it up nicely in that particular quote, because it is the ability to see ourselves with that clarity. So that means, that reflection is not opaque, it's not distorted, it is actually how we are being and how we're turning up, which is really this state that I think some of you mentioned, Mike certainly mentioned in the chat, to understand who we are. And I think, Mandy, you said before earlier on, that's about that acceptance piece. It's understanding who we are. I love the term meeting someone where they are at. And I think that is absolutely applicable to ourselves. It's meeting ourselves where we're at. And with that, we're able to better manage expectations of ourselves, not be too harsh, but also not be too lenient, where we're not holding ourselves to account for particular behaviors. And then seeing how we fit into the world. What's our place? What's the role or responsibility that we've got in this particular situation, in this particular context? What is being asked of us in this moment? So I wanted to, if you haven't, can I just have a show of hands if you're familiar with Tara's work? Is anyone familiar with the work? Oh, good. Okay. Not good, but I'm glad that I'm able to share something with you that you might not have known before today. I think she's brilliant, and I really, really love her work. And I'll share a few other bits and pieces from Tara's work today that might help in terms of self-awareness. Okay. We'll move to the next one. So I was interested in sharing some statistics with you on how self-aware do we really think we are? Because when I get up in front of a group of leaders and we might do a little quick poll on, how self-aware are you? Usually I use a tool called the Clarity 4D, which some of you have used with me. And that Clarity 4D certainly helps us to gain a different perspective. It is a tool that is a personality profiling tool based on your self-perception. But it does help us to become more self-aware. But in preparing for this session, I started to think about, well, maybe sometimes we overestimate how self-aware we are. And these were some of the statistics that I found that I wanted to share with you. Back to Dr. Tasha Eurich that you just saw, her book Insight. She found, as part of a research study that her and her team did, that whilst 95% of people think they are self-aware, this is huge. Only 10 to 15% actually meet the criteria when we measure them objectively. Gee, that's a big, big, big differential, right? Massive. So in terms of, we might all go, yeah, I'm self-aware. I was very conscious of my body language, my spoken language, um, you know, the balance in the conversation of the voices. I was, keen to understand more. So I was lean, all those kinds of things. But maybe we're actually not as self-aware as what we think. So I reckon that's a little scary statistic. And then as you're reflecting on these, it might be good just to do a little bit of a check with yourself, a check-in. Another study, University of Nebraska in the States, found that 78% of professionals rated themselves in the top 20% for self-awareness. Almost statistically impossible in terms of that. And you can see all the sources. If you want to go in and kind of nerd out and geek out on the data, they're all there for available for you. And then finally, Gallup, they found that employees who receive feedback on their strengths were 88.9% more productive, yet only 26% of employees report receiving regular feedback. So while they're saying that they're receiving this feedback, they're more productive, not too many are receiving that feedback. So I think in terms of statistics, it's interesting just to see how, whether we're overshooting it. And I think it's easy for us to all go, well, we are self-aware. Of course, we all want to be self-aware. It's like we all want to be empathetic and we all want to be compassionate. But it's always good just to do that check of whether we really are or not. So that's the first little kind of thing for you to be thinking about, maybe jotting down, how self-aware am I really? And how do I know? Am I overestimating how self-aware I am, that I am? And we're going to be looking at some tools today to help you with that. So we know that we should be more self-aware. Does anyone disagree with that comment? Does anyone think, no, I don't need to be more self-aware? All right. So if we're saying, all of us as a group collectively, we're saying we know that we should be more self-aware, I wanted to share with you again some statistics that absolutely demonstrate the compelling reasons, not only because it feels like the right thing to do and it's better when we are self-aware, but it's more than that in terms of what it provides. So it absolutely provides benefits from a higher job performance and career success perspective. So that's you. For our organizations that we're in, it means we are better leaders, but it also leads to more profitable companies. Now, with that term profitable, you may be in a non-for-profit and profit may not be the thing that drives you. So you could sub into that, whatever you wanted. So better outcomes for our stakeholders. Whatever your purpose and impact measures are, you can sub it in for that. Obviously, the statistic that's there is from the Hay Group, and it's looking at companies that do measure profit. But as you're thinking about this, I'd encourage you to think about, well, what are my impact measures, my organisation, my team's impact measures? And it's probably going to have a very similar impact for you. Stronger relationships and communication skills. When we're turning up and we're self-aware, people are going to be more engaged in building stronger relationships with us because they know that we care. They know that if they are going to go to the trouble of providing us with some feedback, that we're going to care about that. And we may not always act on feedback, and I'll go into that in 10 or 15 minutes or so, but it's important that we're receiving it with gratitude and at least accepting it. It's like when we were little kids, what were we taught to do when we get a present, right? Even if you think the present is naff, you say thank you, right? Because that is the kind thing to do. We are respecting and honoring that person has gone to the trouble of giving us a gift. And then that the well-being measure that comes out of it or benefit can't be ignored either. So this is really interesting, and that's in the last source that you have there from Hepner and Kernis. But higher well-being and life satisfaction comes from more self-awareness. So interestingly, for these people that participate in this study, those who practice self-awareness for only 8 weeks showed a 23% reduction in stress and a 29% in overall well-being. So I think these statistics here for me, not that we necessarily needed them, because we all agreed, we all agreed from the start that we need it, but these are some pretty compelling statistics that really demonstrate the benefits of self-awareness beyond us. Has anyone got any comments? I'm just going to scan the chat. Any comments on what you've seen so far, just from a statistic perspective, on whether we're either overestimating self-awareness or why we should be more self-aware. We're good to keep going? Oh, Barb.
Oh, I was just going to have a thought. If one, I'm thinking of a couple of leaders who are completely not self-aware, and we won't talk about our American politicians, but it's very well and good to be self-aware, but like you're saying, you've really got to practice what you've learned from that. So, for instance, I know that I'm actually quite shy, even though I'm in the position that I'm in. So I really have to push myself to participate when we have a morning tea or things like that, rather than just being a person like against the wall.
Yeah. And that awareness and insight for you, Barb, what has that been able to unlock or to help you do now that you've got that insight?
It's really just pushes me to make sure that I'm interacting with people, and then that helps our relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So particularly, I mean, Barb's got the most senior people role in her institution. So those roles that are very visible, and this goes for any role actually, but even more so because it is, I imagine, Barb, that as you're building those relationships, you're also getting a different kind of, it's an ear to the ground around what's happening. Yeah. Because I reckon the more senior you become, people filter what comes to you. Yeah. So you're not always hearing what's happening on the ground. And even when there is something happening on the ground, by the time it makes its way up to you through your team, through your colleagues, through, whoever it is, there's, maybe some of the story has come away a little bit. Maybe it's changed a little bit. There is that when we're sharing stories. That just happens as part of storytelling. But I think sometimes it loses, sometimes it can lose the importance of it, whatever that feedback is. So important also to just keep the ear to the ground, particularly when you are in one of those very, very senior roles. Okay. Excellent. So if we needed more, as I said, feel free to geek out on the research. It's all there for you. But there is plenty that a bunch of books, including Tara's book, Insight, that has been written on it too. So now, what I wanted to do was introduce you to the types of self-awareness. Now, this is from Tara's work, and I particularly liked this because I think, this little model, a 2x2, and gosh, don't we all love a 2x2, right? For me, it really helps me to understand the information. But there's different levels of self-awareness. And I think, as I was preparing for this session for you and really delving into Tasha's work, why did I call it Tara, in a lot more detail, it made me think that there are some drivers, for self-awareness, things that might encourage or entice me to be more self-aware. I'm not always going to be up in that aware quadrant. A good 2x2, we always want to be in the top right hand of any of these kind of models. I'm not always going to be absolutely aware because these are really driven by my interest in being more self-aware. So that's that internal self-awareness. But then also that external self-awareness is what others may see when we are being more aware. So you've got their introspectors. So I'm not going to read this out to you. You've got it. Feel free to take screenshots as we go, and we'll provide the slides to you in our little community page. But I think there's, like any model and like any concept, it's always interesting to think about it like a continuum and where you sit on that continuum. Are you a seeker? So we don't yet know what we stand for. Our internal drive for self-awareness and external drive is still quite low. And so we might not, if you're here, it's hard to read the play. It's hard to understand people's feedback, to us. Maybe their feedback is not clear. Maybe we haven't set it up right, or the relationship is not at a level where there's high trust for that feedback to be forthcoming and clear. But then conversely with aware, this is really where we get to start to unlock the potential that comes from self-awareness, because we understand who we are, which goes back to that earlier definition that we saw. We know what we want to accomplish, so we're very clear on our purpose. And we also know when we're not arrogant in that we do seek out other people's opinions and views, not so much as a check-in for how am I going? Can you give me that feedback on how I'm going? But more from a consultation perspective. So we kind of, I can make what I think is a really nice dinner, and I might be enjoying that dinner. But if the people around me, maybe for whatever reason, I've used too much, whatever, dill in my dish and it's not doing it for them. So I could be happily sitting there kind of eating my dish going, this is fab. But if I'm not checking in and I'm regularly cooking for these people, I might inadvertently continue to add dill when it's not their thing, but I think it's fab. Now, on that occasion, I like dill, so I might just decide to add it a little bit later to my plate, not to everybody else's, or I might modify the amount of dill that I'm adding. But I hope that's making sense to you around when we go into that aware, we're seeking out people's opinion. We're not bloody minded around this dish is delicious because I've cooked it and you shall eat it because I am your leader, right? We are seeking that feedback, seeking and valuing the feedback, even when we don't agree with it, but we're valuing that practice of giving each other that feedback. And, it is that dynamic conversation, and it is a conversation between two. This is really, I think, where we start to unlock the value and the potential of self-awareness. Any comments on this one before we move on? Is anyone happy to share where they may sit or where they, kind of pointing towards? Can you see yourself reflected in all of these 4 quadrants at different points in time?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That probably in different points, there's different ways I go, yep, I do it that way. But probably my least one would be aware, even though I probably in a way know what I want to accomplish, but I'm probably not so good at seeking out or receiving that feedback. So, there's different times you're in different parts of it.
Yeah.
Probably the other one is, probably not so much seekers, but I was thinking like the introspectors and the pleasers are probably my main two.
Yeah. And do you think it's like different people, I think, can bring about a different place where we may sit in this little quadrant map? And I also think different situations. So if you think about your last promotion or when you jumped up to another level, whatever the level that is for you, I think we kind of go back, not necessarily to the start, but whenever I've had a jump, it feels like I go back a little bit and I've got to learn a little bit more about myself. Does anyone resonate, or does that resonate for anybody? Different leadership level, different expectations, different team, different organization. All of those things mean that whilst you have not necessarily changed, you're still turning up as you are placed in a different situation. And any time that happens to you, it's always worthwhile just doing that check around, am I being self-aware? Is there an opportunity for me here to be tuning in and being more self-aware? Because there will be things as you develop in your, in your career, or even as you're moving jobs, where you'll find yourself in a different spot and go, oh, I'm reacting to something differently, or this thing is having an impact on me that it never had before. So get curious when that happens. And what I would encourage is curiosity and not judgment. Because it's really easy to go, oh, damn it, or I'm really mad at myself, or I'm really disappointed in myself, or maybe I didn't deal with that as well as what I could have, or like others do that I see. And where that stuff starts to creep in, I would encourage you to pause on judgment. Say, thanks very much, judgment, for turning up. Thank you. You have turned on the self-awareness switch for me, but now I'm going to get really curious around why that is. Is it fear? Is it a lack of confidence? Is it that I want to make a really good impression? I'm worried about reputational risk. A lot of the time it comes down to fear and confidence. All right. We will keep moving for now. And I wanted to introduce you to this tool. You may have already seen this one, the Johari window. Has anybody seen this tool before? Yeah, I've got a few nods. Okay. For those of you that haven't, the Johari window was written, created as a model back in a long, 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 long time ago, 1955, well before most of us were around. It was Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham that came up with it. So they were Brangelina before Brangelina was a thing. And for those of you that don't understand that pop reference, then I've got to get a bit more up to date. But basically, the combination of two names, Joe and Harry, Joseph and Harry, and it became the Johari window. At the time, they were working as corporates in organizational behavior in an organization. And so they were, able to play with models and really test them out. And so they came up with this. And I think this one has stood the test of time. I really enjoy using it from a self-awareness perspective because it gives us a view of what we need to do to be more self-aware, but also what we need to do to encourage more feedback from others. So I'll go through and then I'll ask you a little reflection question if that's okay. So we'll start off with the open area or the open arena. And please, for those of you that are familiar with it, feel free to jump in and give us a little bit more insights in relation to what you know about this tool. Our open area is what's known to others and what's known to us. So today, I've shared with you that I use a tool called the Clarity 4D. So you know that and I know that because I have shared it with you. Often in sessions, my poor family get talked about a lot in sessions. They don't know it necessarily. I don't share all the little stories with them. No, I don't say anything out of confidence, but often something that's happened, I'll bring it in because it'll make me think about something. And so in sharing that with you, you know it and I know it. Now, when I'm doing that with you, how does it make you feel when I'm sharing stuff with you about me that you wouldn't ordinarily know? How does it make you feel? Feel free to oh, thank you, Mandy.
I was going to say trusted.
Yeah, good. Trusted, connected, as Samantha's also said. When we're sharing, we're going into that vulnerable territory, right? I did cook a dish with a lot of dill last night. That wasn't made up. They liked it, thankfully. And my mum and my brother and his family were over. The kids didn't touch it, but they're 4 and 6. Of course, they're not going to touch it. Who likes dill when they're 4 and 6, right? Auntie Rita did not take any offense. But that open area, I've shared that with you, right? Exactly. Relatable. We're building that trust, right? And we're doing that because we're opening up our open area. Now, there's sometimes things that are in that hidden area. And these are things that I may know about myself, but you may not know. And these are things that sometimes you don't really need to know. Not because I want to be secretive with you, but it just, you don't need to know that I played rounders in grade 4. You might even be going, what the hell is rounders? But it's like a T-ball kind of game for those of you that don't know it. Growing up here in Victoria, I'm not sure if it's a Victorian thing. Does everyone know what I mean by rounders? Yeah, good. Okay, see, Samantha's going, no, I'll explain it to you later, Samantha. Kind of like T-ball, softball, one of those, like you run around, you hit it, you run around to the base. It's not important for you to really know that, don't you reckon? Like I've now put it into the open area because I've shared it, but otherwise you're not going to benefit from knowing that I played that in grade 4. I don't benefit knowing that I did that in grade 4 either because I didn't go on to join a rounders team or anything like that. It's in my hidden area. It's not known to others. I know it. Probably of no use or benefit to you. The hidden area, I could with my pen draw an imaginary line about 3/4 down the hidden area. And we have to be careful because we have these people in our team and we may be those people, and that's oversharers. And so oversharers tend to share more than what they need to. And they do it for various reasons, right? But sometimes if someone who's an oversharer could be reminded that they don't need to share everything that they might bring, particularly into work, and particularly when it's not going to really benefit the other person, knowing that thing about you. Yeah. So the hidden area, it's a really good reminder if you're in that leadership role that we hear and we read a lot about being authentic and being vulnerable, and that is important. They are absolutely important hallmarks and capabilities in leadership, but you don't need to go revealing absolutely everything about yourself. Right, so it's always just that judgment call that needs to be made. If we head over to the unknown territory, I might not know something about me and you may not know something about me. And I call this the land of opportunity. So thinking about, when you've given a member of your team something new to do, a new task, a new project, maybe a new client group, maybe you've got them working on a new product line or category in your business, you know that they're a solid performer. So you've got enough trust in there to know that you can give them something, but you're not going to know whether they're good at that particular thing. And at that point, they might not know that they're good either. So the unknown is worth exploring because it is this land of opportunity, but it does come with risk. Just as sharing something that's in your hidden quadrant also comes with risk. And then finally, the blind spots. And earlier in our session today, I mentioned if you're teaching teenagers or have taught teenagers how to drive, blind spots are really important, right? Obviously, they're very important if we're driving cars, for those of you that drive. The new cars now have a little triangle on the side mirror. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? And that flashes when a car is coming into your blind spot. So there's two older kids in my family. One's been driving now for a year. He's 19. Our 17-year-old is learning. She's not that keen really to be doing her hours, which means I'm probably be driving her a lot more than what I wanted to when she turns 18. But one thing we have taught the kids is to do this head check, right? Do you remember when you were learning how to drive? For those of you that are drivers, you are taught to do the head check. I didn't tell them about the little triangle because I wanted them to do the head check. Matthew's sorted out. He's 19, been driving for ages. My daughter has not yet sorted out. I'm not telling her because I want her to do the head check. I don't want her to rely on this little triangle, right? And she could get into a car one day that doesn't have the little triangle to tell her. So we're doing that head check. Now, the blind spot, I call this, let's go with dill because we've been talking about dill. I call this the dill in your teeth. It's lunchtime. Yeah, Mandy's laughing. It's lunchtime. And if we have had our lunch, who was eating chili before? Someone was. James, was that you? Yep. James, I think you're fine. I can't see your teeth from here. But if James has come back from lunch and poor James has got some dill in his teeth, right? James is going to have to rely on all of us to say, hey, James, and we might be very subtle in how we do it, but you've got some food in your teeth. We're not going to let poor James walk around all afternoon with food in his teeth unless we're mean. Why else? So let's say James is in our team and we've given James that feedback. Hey, James, you've got some dill in your teeth. And James has sorted that out. So James not embarrassing himself the rest of the afternoon. Sorry, James, I'll stop picking on you in a moment. What do you reckon that does next time we want to give James some feedback? That exchange that we've given some feedback. James has accepted it. What does it do for feedback going forward? We're setting up a positive situation. Yeah. Now, let's say that James told us, and you would never do this, but let's say James told us to get lost and mind our own business. What happens next time we are thinking about giving James some feedback? Do you reckon we'd do it?
I'd let him have the dill in his teeth.
Exactly right, Mandy. And that is what happens particularly in teams, and particularly when we are the leader, because of the power differential that already exists. When we go, no, go away, get lost, I'm not interested in your feedback. And we might not even say that, but it's the ignored email. It's the not zero acknowledgement of feedback. It's avoiding people because we don't necessarily want to hear what they have to say. It's not setting up those conditions for connection and trust and all those things that we talked about. So when we do the virtual or actual talk to the hand, I don't want to listen, people stop giving us feedback. And then if that happens enough, we walk around with metaphoric dill in our teeth. And there will be moments when there's always moments where we really need our people's feedback. But because we have dismissed them, or because we've ignored them, or because we have discounted the feedback, not said thank you, don't have to agree with it, they will stop telling us that we've got dill in the teeth. We're going to walk around embarrassed. And this is where blind spots become really dangerous for leaders and anyone, but we're focusing our masterclass on leaders today. It becomes super dangerous because you end up with a lack of clarity, that opaque view when you are looking in the mirror because you can't see what everybody else can see. And that's the danger with blind spots. Everybody else can see it. So you can't pretend that it's not there because they can see it, but you don't see it. So what are we going to do to reduce the risk of blind spots? What can we do? Mel said be more receptive for next time, which we can. We absolutely can. What else can we do? If we want to reduce the risk that these blind spots are going to blindside us, what can we do? Any ideas? Yeah, exactly. Invite and welcome regular feedback and be open even when it's hard to hear. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is really hard to hear because particularly when you know that, oh, I don't know how that conversation went. You know, you walk away with that icky feeling going, oh, I don't think that conversation went so well. So even when you know that there might be feedback that's hard to hear, we need to be open to it. Yeah. I think one of Barb's comments earlier on was that feedback is a gift. It's a great motto to live by because even when we know that this isn't going to be great, it's not going to feel great, but we're going to take the learning from that and apply it. So I don't have things in my blind spot. To close out this Johari piece, the reality is that we are going to have blind spots. We are going to have things that are unknown and we are going to have hidden areas. And a way to overcome that is to try and increase our open area or arena with those that are around us, those that are in our team. And in order to be able to increase, so if you think about this as it's called a window, but if you think about, reducing these 3 window panes, so the hidden, the unknown, and the blind spot, and making the open pane bigger, that's what our aim is with the Johari window. And we do that from reducing our blind spots, reducing what's unknown, and reducing what's hidden. Not to the extent that we become an oversharer, but just, So, for example, sharing a story because it helps someone as you're trying to display empathy because you've been through a shared experience. That would be an example. Barb and Mandy, because you both nodded you're familiar, and anyone else that's familiar, have I left anything out that you would add in relation to the Johari window? So thank you. The aim of the game here is opening up our open pane, our open arena. To do that, we need to reduce our blind spots, reduce what's unknown, reduce what's hidden. Is it enough? You might be the most senior leader of your organization. Is it enough? Are we guaranteed to get feedback when we say, can I have your feedback? Is that enough? No. Why not? Come on, I'm the most senior person. Surely I've got some power. Surely. Louise, you've smiled. Let us know more. What are you thinking?
Well, there's a real vulnerability, isn't there, in providing feedback to a senior leader?
Yeah. Yeah. And James has said unsafe. And that's exactly what happens. So the more senior you become, because you go, oh, I'm the most senior person, of course. When I ask for feedback, it's going to come to me. No, it does not. Remember, it's filtered by the time it comes to you. No one wants to disappoint you because there is this power in, differential. And as Mel said, yeah, it is a two-way street. So we've got to be able to provide it to them. But just because you ask for it, it doesn't matter what level of leadership you're at, you're not guaranteed to get it. So the things that are going to help us, if we're trying to open up our open arena, the things that are going to help us is trust. Maintaining that trust with our people, having that self-awareness. And if they tell us we've got dill in the teeth, do something about it. Go sort that out firstly, because it's embarrassing for you and offensive for everybody else. But make sure that we're not saying talk to the hand and we're really, really paying attention. All right. So that's Johari. So just a very quick 1-minute reflection for you. If you had to pick of those 4 quadrants in the Johari window, so either open area, blind spot, hidden, or unknown, which one do you think you need to work on? If you had to work on one. And an easier way to think about this is, who do I want to develop a better relationship with? So who do I need more feedback from? Who do I want to develop a better relationship with? And then this is a little reflection question for you. So if you want to open up more, be more open, what are my leadership strengths that I rely on most frequently, and how has this shaped my success and my limitations as a leader? And then I might share that. So I'll give you a moment just even to take a little snapshot of that if you like, and then maybe, or put a little asterisk in your notes around where you might want to go to focus on really developing that feedback. Everyone good to keep going? You've taken a little shot? Okay. All right. Now, I mentioned that, earlier on in the session that taking pausing as a leader is one thing that we often forget because things get really busy. Like operational roles are really, really busy. And then when you become senior and you're moving into executive roles, sometimes the pace feels quite frenetic and you're leading others. And it's not instinctive always to take a breath. For some people, it is. So for some people that have got really good practices around mindfulness, meditation, slowing down, taking a walk in the sunshine, not responding to an email as soon as it comes in, like all of the above, plus other things, they are all practices that can help us to slow down. For most of us, though, we need the reminder. And so this little model was developed a few years ago now. Aria in Italian means breath, air. So this little model is encouraging you to take a breath, to actually just stop and reflect. And when we are trying to become more self-aware and really tuning into those blind spots, we need to do this even more so. Because I don't know about you, but if you've ever had that a time when you've had to kind of be thinking, but you're right in the thick of things, I know that my decisions are always poor whenever I've had to make a decision under those circumstances. And it's me putting myself in those circumstances, by the way, no one else. So when I've got so much going on and I can't take a breath and I'm not developing a sense of awareness, I'm not reflecting, I'm not developing any insights, what sometimes happens is we go straight from awareness to action. So, it's kind of like cause, effect, or action, response, and it's quick. And I know for myself, whenever I've dealt with kind of bigger issues and I've missed reflection and insight because I've tried to speed on in really fast because I feel like, oh, I've got to make a decision, got to make it right now. If I don't make a decision, I'll look like I, can't make a decision. Inactivity is bad. I've got to have a position. Whenever that has happened, I've usually made a poor decision. And then I think, oh, if I had just thought that through a little bit more, if I had just sought feedback from others, if I had given myself just a little bit more time for that reflection, I would have developed a different insight, which would have led to a different action. Yeah. So when we are trying to tune into ourselves and develop more self-awareness, hopefully it's a reminder for you that you can't go straight from awareness to action. And yet we probably do it every day because there's so much coming through the inbox and so much coming through the workflow and all these people we care about, and sometimes people we don't care about, people that need stuff. We've got to be on for all these people all the time. And my invitation for you here is just to go, yeah, no, maybe not. Give yourself some time. Now, I know you're all very, very busy people and you don't have half an hours or hours to spare to kind of sit there contemplating. So this doesn't have to be lengthy, but when you are in the middle of something, can you give yourself an extra 5 or 10 minutes? Just 5 or 10 minutes. And just go through this model. Like just jot this down stick it on a post-it note somewhere near your desk or take a picture of it, whatever you want to do. But this is I've got awareness, so I know how I behaved or I know what's expected of me in this situation. What's my reflection based on that? How is it impacting others? The insight, what am I going to do? Right? Or really the insight is also what are my options? And then finally the action. Then I can take action because I know that I've properly considered something before I just scoot on into action. Yeah. So this is just another little one just to really take that pause and have a breath or take a moment for some aria, some air. So I want to share that one with you too to help us along with self-awareness. And then finally, what would be a little workshop on self-awareness if we didn't talk about feedback? Because we have talked about feedback today. We talked about we're kind. We would give James some feedback about lunch in the teeth. We would absolutely do that. Feedback is one of those key ingredients in self-awareness, because looking in the mirror, we talked earlier, I talked earlier on about the fact that I might look in the mirror and see quite a different image to what others see. And so without that the feedback kind of sharpens it. Yeah, it brings it into focus. And it just gives us like a slightly clearer view. Sometimes it gives us a more opaque view, by the way. So it doesn't always sharpen it. And this is where we've got to be discerning with our feedback. But I wanted to take you through two little final concepts on feedback. And one is that when we are giving feedback to someone, that maybe we're trying to increase some self-awareness, we will have an intention around that feedback, that whether we are clear about it or not. So our feedback intention can do a number of things, as you see there, 6 things at least. I hope you'll appreciate my eye palette, by the way, that I've used, just to let you know what can happen. But we might want to initiate a conversation with them. That might be our intention. We might want to influence a view or a belief or an approach. We might want to have some impact. And impact is kind of, you get this sense of spark. We're not just initiating. We actually kind of want to come sliding on in and bang, we want to create that impact. We might want to protect them with an inoculation. We might want to give them some feedback because they're not being very well received. And we want to let them know that so we can create a circuit breaker. They become aware. So we're inoculating them. We might want to irritate them because we don't really like them. And we see that at play all the time, unfortunately. Someone, and it's not, I want to sit down with you and have a conversation, give you some feedback. This is those bites, and they feel like bites that can come in a meeting quite cutting. It does feel very unsafe. Those kinds of things that do irritate. But, and then finally, we might want to inform. But these are all things that the purpose here is to understand that when we are providing that feedback to hopefully help someone be more self-aware, it's worthwhile thinking about our intention. Because when we're thinking about our intention, that might change our language. It might change our delivery around what we want to do with that feedback. Okay. And then we've got our reactions. So we've talked about when we are providing feedback, what our intention might be. But now we've got our reactions. We have a choice on how we can choose to react when we are receiving feedback. This is really important. So, remembering that if we're a leader and we're saying, hey, have you got any feedback? The way that we respond based on what you see there and our different options, and they are options, will either mean that we receive feedback and it continues to be forthcoming, or people go, no, I'm not doing that again because I gave feedback and I saw what happened. I experienced what happened when I gave feedback, and if that feels unsafe, I'm not going to do that again. When we're receiving feedback, our reaction might be just to receive it graciously. My youngest is now 10 years old. I've said to all 3 kids, when you receive a gift, even if you don't like it, you say thank you. And I didn't raise them that way to become little liars, of course, but when you receive a gift, it's not actually about the gift. It's about the person's act of thinking of you and going to the trouble of getting you something, even if it's this little paper flower that my daughter made for me out of Post-it notes. She's in year 12 and this is one of her procrastination techniques. So she makes these little paper flowers, right? We receive it graciously and we say thank you. It doesn't matter whether we like it or not, right? We might want to reflect on the feedback. We might want to rewind, like we might want to go, oh, like, yes, I remember now that I said that thing and gee, I didn't understand the impact of it at the time that I gave you that feedback. I wish I could rewind. We often can't, but it's sometimes nice to offer that to someone, to say, oh, if I had my time again, I would have said it differently. I'm sorry that it's had that impact. We might want to rebut. That's not always useful, by the way. It hardly ever is, but we might want to go in for, no, you're wrong. Your feedback sucks. Keep your feedback to yourself. You might not point fingers like that, but you know what I mean? Like that's a reaction we can have. And then finally, we might regret, which is a little bit like a rewind. We might regret the reaction that we've had. Maybe through the reaction, we realize that we could have done something differently, that our behavior has had an impact on someone else. But as we're trying to tune into being more self-aware, part of becoming more self-aware is taking the risk of either giving or receiving that feedback. And I think it's important that we really think, feedback is not, it's so multi-layered that when we really think about, well, what's my intention here with the feedback I want to give and what's my choice on reaction, it may mean that we interpret it differently and then we do something different with that feedback. All right. I'm going to pause there before we go to our last 2 slides. Are there any questions? It's over to you now. Questions on or thoughts, what you've heard, what's been interesting, what you might use coming out of our little masterclass today. James, go for it.
I really like the 2 wheels. They got me thinking a bit, and I'm kind of curious about the feedback on the feedback, that piece of how you maybe reward or affirm feedback. I'm thinking that's something I'm curious to maybe dig a little more into.
Yeah. What are other people thinking in relation to James' comment? And then I'll give a view. What are you thinking?
So I was just thinking that sometimes it isn't easy to receive the feedback, and you can receive it badly, even just in your body language. And I think it's worth reflecting on that and going back and saying, look, that was really hard to hear. Thank you for for letting me know, and what you're going to do.
Even at the time, if you're feeling like it's hard to hear it, I reckon it's good to declare that.
Yeah.
Because the person will see your face change and they'll see your body language and they will make meaning from that, because we are sense-making machines, right? They will see it. So it is good, I think, to declare it and kind of go, this is hard to hear. But I am going to take it away. I'm going to think about it, and then you're declaring your reaction, but then also what your intention is with it. I think, James, what your comments made me think about a feedback culture. And if we want our teams to be more self-aware, so not only us developing our self-awareness, but also our teams developing more self-awareness, which leads to good things, as we've seen, then it does go to the heart of feedback culture, how we're providing that feedback, and really making sure that we're doing it consistently and with some consistent practices too that match our organization. So that's what your comments made me think about just then, and how we do that. Mel, I can see your hand up too.
Yeah, it's just having a look at the feedback reaction and the word regret. It was just a conversation I had with my sister yesterday, and we were discussing about whether it's regret or something you would change, because they sort of mean 2 different things. And I suppose regret means that you feel, I suppose, to me, really, really bad about it. But and I think, yeah, sometimes using that word regret sometimes, yeah, indicates something quite damning, whereas maybe it's how you can change it. So just something, yeah, it's just an interesting conversation we were having yesterday, and I just thought of it when I saw regret, because, yeah, is it something that you really regret, or is it just something you wish you could change?
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes it reminds me of that there's shades within that extreme, yeah? If we went regret, change, and kind of plotting them out, and what would be the circumstances that might lead us to one or the other or both, or a little bit in between. Yeah. We're on time. I just wanted to quickly say thank you to you. For those of you that I've not worked before, thank you. And for those of you that I have, obviously, thank you. There are a bunch of ways that we can work together. So if you haven't jumped on to the Deliberate Leader website, we've just launched it last week. So jump on the deliberateleader.com.au. We've got all our service offerings in there, along with our team too. So you can meet the team, have a look at the experience of the team, and it gives you a little bit more information in relation to our programs and services, including coaching that we offer. And then finally, there's a little QR code there for you. So I have mentioned our community page. If you haven't jumped on there, it's again the deliberateleader.net.au, but that QR code will take you there. And that's got a bunch of stuff on most topics that we cover in the Deliberate Leader. There's a Deliberate Leader diagnostic. There's this is the book. There's download. You can download a chapter of the book, which is You Are How You Lead. And also information about our next masterclass, which is now in May. So we're missing April because April is a big kind of holiday period. There's Easter and Anzac Day and all the rest of it and school holidays. But we're back in May and we're going to be looking at fear and how fear can be a useful driving force. So thank you for coming along today and sharing some time with me. I hope you found the session useful, and I hope to see you next time too. See you later. Have a good Monday and a good rest of the day. See ya.